guys? Ooh, we're awake. I love it. Well, just like the rest of us, I brought my dragons with me today. They're a little bit more domesticated than they used to be, so they're just going to stay over here. But they do travel with us, don't they? Yeah. Well, my name is Sydney. My mom calls me Sydney-ramus. My dad calls me Cupcake. My husband calls me Babe. And my children call me Mom. Hi, I can see you waving at me. They're out here listening to my speech today and gave me permission to share our story with you today. I earned the title of Mom at 17 years old. Do you guys remember what you were doing at 17 years old? People were probably asking you, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to major in? I came home to my parents and said, I'm getting married and I'm going to adopt a baby. And they were like, okay. My parents are amazing, and they taught us to love every human and to work hard, and that every person is important. And so when I met this sweet baby and I fell in love with him and brought him home, they loved him too. And in the couple of years after that, we started on a lifelong journey. And my sweet baby Carson was diagnosed with a brain injury that actually had happened at birth. And so at this point, he was 3 years old and having some struggles that we didn't know how to handle. Here I am, 19 years old. My second child was born, and now I have a 3-year-old with special needs. I found myself as a single parent, living back with my parents, trying to figure it all out. And it was scary, y'all. Like, I'm talking the kind of fear that will bring you to your knees. That blue dragon right there, on my knees, almost every day. But what I will tell you is, he has also taught me some of the most important lessons in my life. And as I've walked through this journey, as I'm sure all of you have also experienced, people will come alongside you that are supposed to, like Shelby Bills, who you guys just met, who has taught me many lessons, but the most important one has been forgiveness and grace. Forgiveness for others, forgiveness for myself, right? The hardest of all of them. And through working with Shelby, I actually met another incredible human being named Rick. Now, Rick had a specialty working with kids like mine. He loved them, and to know Rick was to know joy. He saw life through a lens of love. He didn't see color, he didn't see age, he didn't see gender, and he didn't see ability. He just saw humans, and it was beautiful. And together, we had a dream of a world where kids create empathy, and they experience it, and then they grow into kind and loving adults. Could you guys imagine a world where we all just loved each other without judgment? Could you imagine the things that we could do? Misty's kind of on the same track with her mission. It's beautiful. And the good news is we all have the tools to do that. It just takes stepping into each other's shoes for a moment. After the last couple of years, would you guys not agree that it is hard enough to walk in your own shoes some days? Yeah, right, it's been rough. But if you could show up somewhere, step into somebody else's shoes, have that experience, and then step back into your shoes, wouldn't you do that? Instead of having to figure it out and research and do all of the things, what if you could just go do that? Right? So that is what my dream is to create. And I believe that it starts with our children. You hear it all the time. Kids are mean. Kids are the worst. They're just being kids. You know? No more. There is no excuse to not treat each other with kindness. Now, Carson has a brain injury, which comes with other complications. One of those complications being cerebral palsy. Just with a raise of hands, who's ever heard of cerebral palsy? Look around. It's beautiful, almost all of you. So, for those of you that don't know about cerebral palsy, it affects the part of the brain that tells your muscles to either be tight or to be loose. They can be one, they can be the other, or they can be both. In my child's case, he has both, which makes him very complicated and very complex. Now, Carson is a growing boy. He is 12 years old now, which makes me feel old. Y'all, old. And we recently heard him complaining about some pain that we hadn't heard about before. So we took him to the doctor, where they did some x-rays, and the muscles in his legs were so tight that they were twisting and pulling his bones out of place. Could you imagine? Have you guys ever had somebody that you love so much hurt? You know how you can feel it, and there's nothing that you can do, right? Red and black dragon, hopelessness, right? So we were faced with a decision. It was an easy one to make. It was either we have surgery to correct all of this and to help with the pain, or I put my 12-year-old child in a wheelchair full time to reduce the stress on his body. Now, this is a child that loves basketball, he loves Legos, he loves tag. I couldn't do that to him, you know? But the prospect of a surgery like that includes stretching of the tendons, it includes breaking of the bones to replace them. It includes casting, which if you guys see him after this, he's still in his cast from the surgery. And it includes bracing for 24 hours a day. And it includes a lifelong commitment to physical therapy. But what it also includes is a life where he can run, and a life where he can play, and a life where he can be like his friends, which doesn't happen very often. So we made the decision to have the surgery. And one morning he came to me and he said, "Mommy, I'm scared." And I said, "I am too." And so I said, "What are you the most scared about?" Because I was thinking maybe we can talk this through. And selfishly, I was like, maybe it'll make me feel better too. So we start talking, and as adults, we're like, logically, he's probably afraid of having his bones broken. He's probably afraid of having to relearn how to walk, right? I would be. Probably worried about being in a wheelchair. How's he going to get around at school and all the things? But no, he was the most afraid of what his friends would say when he came back to school. Now, if that doesn't say that something is wrong here, I don't know what does. So then he says something that just blew me away. And he did something that, I, as an adult, even have trouble saying. He said, "Can you help me?" And he said, "Do you think you can go to my school and talk to my friends and tell them about my surgery and why I have to have it? Because I don't have the answers." So I found myself preparing for my hardest audience. You guys, a room full of 12-year-olds, 35 of them. I was sweaty, let me tell you. This is way easier. So I prepared a few things. I was like, okay, these are kids, so how do they like to learn? They like to play, they like to touch, they like to break things, And so I put together this bag of tricks that I brought with me and spent all this time preparing, and I brought the braces that he'll wear after his surgery so that they could feel them and touch them and bend them and, know what it's going to look like. I brought some ankle weights so that they could experience what it feels like to be heavy and to use more energy just to do everyday movements like Carson experiences. And I brought with me a deer, and this special deer actually has a feeding tube put into it that a friend made for us when Carson had his feeding tube put in. And in the back of my mind, I was like, well, if they have questions about that, then we'll get to talk about it too. So I put all these things in my bag, I get into the classroom, sweaty, right? I take a big deep breath, and I start talking to them. And I share all of these things. We pass around the braces, they put on the ankle weights, and they experience what it's like to be him for a moment, the best that they can, right? Because I can't recreate bones pulling out of place, nor would I want to. But I got to experience it. And what I got to experience in that moment was my child being understood. was him being accepted and was him being loved. Now these kids, you guys, it was incredible. They were engaged, they were loving, they were curious, and all they wanted was to understand so that they could support him better and be better friends to him. And I think all of us have been kids, right? And so we've all been there. We're all born with that inherent innocence and need to be loved and to love, right? So as I'm doing this with these kids and I'm, seeing my child experience what I think for the first time is really being equal with his peers. And it was beautiful. And what I also realized is that when we're kids, that curiosity gets shoved away. We are told to be quiet. We are told to not stare. We're told to not ask the questions. And we're told, not to point, right? Which means as parents, we're not told how to talk about people that are different than us either. I challenge you for a moment to imagine being the person on the other side of that. If I was standing in front of you with my child and they were talking about you, which you can hear, and you want to answer and explain to them and educate them on why you might look different or why you might move differently, and I say, no, shh, be quiet. Don't stare. Would you feel seen? While we think we're being polite, we're actually dehumanizing the person on the other side of that. Right? And until I was in this place, I didn't understand that. But I know that children like mine grow to be adults. And I know that there are adults out there without disabilities who have also felt not seen, not heard, not accepted, not understood. All of us have probably experienced that in some moment, right? It's awful. And we don't want to make anybody else feel that way if you're healthy and forgiving, right, Misty? So Rick and I together had this dream. A dream to create a place where kids and their families can come, step into the experience of someone else, and have a shift in perspective, and have a shift into a different way of loving on each other, which led me to create Rick's Dream. We lost Rick in 2021, and it was a hard loss, y'all. Still not over it. But he is here with me today. And his wife, Deb, is here somewhere in the audience watching me cry on stage, talking about him right now. And so it is my purpose to be here today to speak to you about this and to encourage you all to spend time with people who are different than you. Whether it's a disability, whether it's a race, whether it's background, spend time with them. Ask the questions, get curious, and be kind to each other. If you're interested in what we're doing with Rick's Dream, please connect with me. You can follow us on social media also. But I want to leave you with this. 1 in 64 people have a disability, whether it is visible or not. Every single one of us in this room will experience a disability at some point in our life, whether it's due to an accident, age, choices, things like that. There's a quote that says, "The only disability in life is the inability to see someone as less than, or as more than." And if we live by that philosophy, it's not the people that we see with disabilities that actually have the problem. It is us and the way that we see each other. So I encourage you to be curious, to love each other, and to step into somebody else's shoes. Thank you.